Got a mailbag here this week, and surprisingly, lots of questions, Abby, here as we sit in mid-July.
Yes. All right. Our first one. So there's going to be an inside linebacker battle between Luke Reimer, Nick Henrich, and John Bullock. Who's going to play? Who doesn't make it? And is there room for all three of them?
What about MJ Sherman? Is he not kind of, does he count as a linebacker too, though? And
we're going to do a lot of this.
Linebacker.
Yeah, they're moving guys
but
around.
He's a jack, is what
we
they
try
call
to.
him.
We try to do this thing where we attach positions to guys, and you can with a lot of them, but some of them it's hard to do.
And the stock answer the coaches will keep saying is we train guys to play everywhere.
Yep. Yeah. As far as that goes, though, Abby, one thing I did talk to Nick Henrich today. He's only been cleared to go full go for 2 weeks. I mean, he's full go. I mean, he's ready, and he can't wait. It was a long 8-month grind to get to where he's at, and he said it was a dark period. It was hard. Remember, he got hurt at Purdue last year.
This is a significant injury.
Yeah, knee injury, ACL. It was an ACL, bad ACL. So it was in October. I think it was mid-October when they played Purdue when we were out there. But he's back. But Bullock had a big spring. Reimer will probably finish his career as Nebraska's all-time third leading tackler.
Third behind Levante.
Behind Murtaugh. No, behind Barrett and Murtaugh.
Because Levante only had 2 seasons.
Right. Behind Barrett, Rude, and Jerry Murtaugh. He's on pace to do that. He'll probably do it. Wow. It's think about that. So yeah, it's stiff competition there.
Now he'll have 5 years of on the field play though.
But his first year didn't do
2019.
Yeah, didn't do all that much.
It wasn't a full year.
Still, what he's done is really, I don't want to say remarkable, but it's really impressive.
Is he a senior, Reimer? Or is he
Reimer's a senior.
Okay.
Yeah.
So to the question, I think yes, there is room for all of them.
I do too,
especially with the way they move guys around, and they need to sub more at that position too. You can't have 2 guys playing 700 plus snaps.
100%.
So more bodies, the better.
Yeah.
All right, and I'll say this about Bullock. Rule has kind of hinted that they need to get faster at linebacker, and I think we all can agree they haven't been the fastest their last couple of years.
No.
And that's where if you're going to start to handicap an edge for Bullock over Heinrich, it's the speed.
Yeah, not Reimer. Reimer's got speed.
Yeah, he was a legit track runner. He was a 10-9 guy in high school. But that's where Bullock making the move from safety to linebacker, and he's healthy and he's fresh. Like he might have an edge, but they're going to need to play all those guys.
I'm with Robin on this. They have needed to sub there more.
The drop off between starters and depth at inside linebacker has been a problem for a while.
Yep.
Barrett Rude never was able to sub.
No, he always talked about wanting to play 4 guys, and he played 2.
Yep.
The only time he played one was when Colin Miller got a concussion. Remember that?
Yep.
So they had to start playing.
There were years where guys were playing close to 1,000 snaps on defense. It was
That's not what you want.
Yeah,
Quentin Newsome and Boodle and some of those guys were playing like in the 900s.
Listen, that's the kind of stuff you can do in the AAC, in the American Athletic Conference. This is the Big Ten. It's a lot harder to do.
Yeah, when you're playing in Madison in early November. Mid-November, you better have some fresh bodies on that defense, especially on the front 7.
Yep, 100.
All right, next one. With the hot recruiting run that the Huskers are on, are they planning to save a few spots for higher-ranked recruits to have an option to commit during the season?
I don't think you can be that selective. I just think you got to take good players when they're available to you. I don't know if Nebraska's in a position to hold off anybody right now. And that's where Rule makes the big bucks to figure things out. Like, you can't get worked up and freak out about the numbers. If there are good football players that want to come to Nebraska within reason, they will make it work.
Wouldn't you say it's easier to make it work than ever
with NIL? Yeah. The ability to move around guys.
That's what I mean.
Okay, here's an example. They put Borkature and Bullock on scholarship right now. They're on the 85. A year from now, you might be over, and you can say, we're going to move you off the 85, but you're going to enter into they would enter into their own NIL agreement.
The money they would be paid in NIL would be commensurate with the scholarship. Right.
But it has to be players like that. There's not every player is eligible to kick over.
Oh,
you have to either be a walk-on that goes to scholarship or I believe graduated, or there's, Timmy Bleekrode though, not eligible to go to NIL right now. There's different parameters because otherwise everybody would. I mean, you could theoretically have unlimited scholarship players. You know, if you could kick everyone over to NIL.
Yeah, interesting.
All right. In that same vein, with Nebraska making the final list for Brandon Baker and Nathaniel Frazier, do you actually think the Huskers have a shot at these guys?
It's going to be tough. Baker doesn't plan to take an official visit to Nebraska. I'm in the camp that it's really hard to get a guy like that to commit without a true official. And what is this timeline? It's said to be sometime this summer. So we'll see. Frazier has taken some trips. He's been to Oregon. He's been to Alabama. He's been a lot of places. He really liked Nebraska. And Nebraska was one of the first teams that offered him, you know, at the beginning of it all. But man, he's the number one running back in the country.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm with Sean, especially at a place like Nebraska. Like the visit is so critical for especially with players like that have been there and done it in the recruiting process. The separator is being on campus, especially during the fall, seeing a game, getting that full experience of what it actually means to be a Nebraska football player. And without that, it's just hard to sell.
God, those guys were impressed with this place. So I'll never go back on that. Nate Frazier and Brandon Baker. I mean, they sat in this room.
That was when it was dead here. Imagine that's, I think, what would put it over the top is if they saw the full effect.
So you give the staff credit for getting them in here and making an impression on them. I get it. Some people are going to say, oh, that's great. What's it mean? They made an impression. Well, first of all, it's not over yet. So I think there's got to be a chance. But you got to put yourself in position at least, you know. How often is it going to be easy to get a tackle like Brandon Baker or the number one running back in the country? It's never going to be too
in
easy.
The Callahan era that year in 2005, they got those guys.
They did, but it probably wasn't easy.
No, I mean, you had John Blake. And John Blake had to beat Pete Carroll in the peak of USC's dynasty to get Marlon Leckie.
But you're only 4 years removed from playing in the national championship game.
Correct.
It was a lot different. Way different.
Think about Ndamukong Suh now as a recruit, how hard it would be to get him to Nebraska.
Right. I mean, it's changed. As you have said, Sean, and you're right, the losing is sort of caught up with Nebraska in a very noticeable way in recruiting.
Because those visits were effective, but the bottom line is the results are there, what's happened on the field. And
can't sell winning right now.
No, if a guy's looking at Michigan and Nebraska, you almost look at him like, oh, wait a second.
Do I want to play in the college football playoff or do I want to hope to get into the El Paso Bowl or whatever?
And what should scare the hell out of you is Ernest Hausman type situations where you actually get a guy right and then he goes in the portal, and Ohio State, Michigan, and Iowa are his 3 official visits.
Jeez.
I mean, that's what scares you. Like, what if Carlon Jones is really good?
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden, like, A&M wants him.
Yeah.
Which is a lot closer to Bay City than the 12th man collectives involved with A&M. I mean, that's where we're heading with college football. And back to Nate Frazier, I will say probably one of my favorite recruits I've dealt with and interacted with in years. I mean,
why is that?
This is personality and how fun he was to be around and talk to. You know, I'll be a fan of him wherever he goes because I really, really thought highly of him and his family. And
Brandon too.
And Brandon,
in a different sort of way. He's more laid back,
cerebral, more.
Yeah, very cerebral, but very genuine. Those are the kind of kids you want in your program from in an intangible sense. They're just I've been around Brandon Baker enough to know good kid, smart kid. They get whoever's getting him is going to get a cerebral player who cares about what he's doing.
All right, Abby, final question.
Okay, our last one. This is a story time one, so prepare yourselves. Which former Nebraska assistant coach is your favorite on or off the field? It's a big one.
Former assistant coach, favorite on or off the field? Assistant coach.
You could go hoops if you want.
Okay.
If you want.
All right. I always had a really good time, and that's not favorite because there's a lot of them I liked, but the one media pops was Michael Lewis.
Oh, yeah, you did have a good
relationship. I was now the head coach at Ball State. He was just hilarious, just like this real rough around the edges guy that
blue collar.
Yeah, had a bit of a shell to him, but once you got past that shell, he was hilarious, and his family was super great. So yeah, I'll go Michael Lewis for basketball. There's a lot of really good ones.
He played for Bob Knight.
Yeah,
the last Bob Knight point guard, and we had a good night in Kilroy's with them a couple years ago. Robert.
We did
in Indy.
Yep.
In Indy,
downtown Indy,
$2
Coors light night.
This is Sean thinking everybody knows what Kilroy's is.
It's a renowned sports bar
in Indy,
in Bloomington as well. They have a located.
Whatever.
I mean, no, it's
interesting. Okay, Sean, who's yours?
This is a hard one because you get to know. I mean, we've had a lot of guys come through here as coaches over the years. I mean, John Blake early on was a guy I got to know really well. And
John Blake,
we talked a lot,
R.I.P.
and just how much he loved. I really believe what John Blake did in 2005 played a big factor in captivating the imagination of Husker fans with recruiting, and getting all those recruits in that 1 year. I mean, you think about this in 2005. He beat Oklahoma head-to-head for Tulsa linebacker Philip Dillard, 4-star. He beat L.A. head-to-head for running back Marlon Lucky out of North Hollywood against USC. He beat Tennessee for Nashville defensive end 4-star Barry Turner. And he beat Miami, Mississippi State, and Oregon for defensive lineman Ndamukong Suh in one recruiting cycle.
Man, look at that. There he is right there.
There's the Blakesta. And he almost got Reggie Smith here, which is amazing. I mean, Reggie Smith was a really, really good player, but that's one early on for me. I think I always really liked John Papuchis, thought highly of him, had a good relationship with Coach JP when he was here under Bo. I mean, the Riley era just seems like a flash in the pan. It's hard to even remember much from that time frame when Riley was here.
Yeah, mine is my story time. I mean, I had a love-hate relationship with McBride. We almost got in a fist fight one time in front of people, and it was a legitimate
Did he grab you?
He chased me, and he chased me into an elevator.
But you weren't scared.
No, I wasn't scared. The only reason I ran, the only reason I got out of there is because there was a lot of players around, and I didn't want there to be a scene. But then I walked home. Not home, back to the Journal-Star, and he came up in his pickup and said, "Hey, get in." And I just let him have it. I was like, "Just get the hell away from me. Don't ever, And then from that moment on, we always had a good relationship. But the best probably was George Darlington. I mean, he taught me so much about football, and he is incredibly patient. I didn't play the sport, so there's still a lot I don't know. And George was always there to answer. I mean, and he's super smart and very. You talk about cerebral. And he's still like, you run him into the press box, you run into him at halftime.
Oh yeah.
It's almost like an appointment because he can break down what happened in about 2 sentences that are very meaningful, So yeah, super smart football guy. Those guys see the game way differently than we see.
No doubt.